I have chosen to do my PowerPoint on the dissertation that is titled A Study of the Kodaly Approach to Music Teaching of Selected Skills in a First Grade Music Class. I actually was interested in this and had this as one of my sources for what we're to do on our research project for numbers 1 and 2. So I already had this open and had been looking at it, and so I chose to do my dissertation presentation on this. This dissertation was by Cecilia K. Knox Hudgens back in 1987 from the University of North Texas. I would first like to reiterate what we've studied over and over again in our master's classes, that music is an integral part of a child's education. The earlier a child is exposed to music and musical concepts, the better the chances that a child will have a greater appreciation for music and have a greater aptitude to develop musical skills even later in life. There is much debate, though, about which methodology is the most successful. And that is the statement of the problem is this: what is the best approach to teach first grade elementary students to sing on pitch, to echo rhythms, to be able to clap them back, to audiate, to be able to hear that tone in their head, to audiate tonal patterns, and to audiate rhythm patterns? We ask again, what is the best approach? So the null hypothesis was divided by the lady that did this dissertation into 4 specific categories. There wasn't just one null hypothesis. She divided it into 4. And the 4 statements are: there will be no significant differences in teaching first grade students how to sing on pitch. There will be no significant differences in teaching first grade students how to echo rhythms. Thirdly, there will be no significant differences in teaching first grade students how to audiate rhythm patterns. And lastly, there will be no significant differences in teaching first grade students how to audiate tonal patterns. What was the description of the sample? The population consisted of 121 first grade boys and girls chosen from the central part of Texas. They all came from the same city of 50,000 people. These students were similar in socioeconomic background, and they were taken from 4 different elementary schools. The students were divided into classes and taught one of 4 methods. So I would like to describe each sample group to you. One of the groups was taught the Kodaly method. That was the control group. And Kodaly is a sensory motor approach that uses folk songs. He believed in using songs from the mother language. He uses solfege. Also Kerwin hand signs and rhythmic syllables. Then another approach was the traditional approach that applied methods used in the 1960s. This included singing by rote. There was no solfege. There were no rhythm syllables. They had drills. They had rules to be learned. They used rhythm instruments. Most of us can remember doing that in grade school. The teacher implied games, and it is teacher-centered. Okay, that was a second approach. The third approach was an eclectic approach, which eclectic doesn't just focus on one thing. It actually focuses on, it institutes several methods from different people. So this specific approach incorporated parts from many methods, but it incorporated some of Kodaly's methods with a broader repertoire with singing, reading, and solfege. So it didn't do everything Kodaly. It used some other things, but it also used Kodaly to the point with a broader repertoire, though, and it did use solfege. This the other method was an eclectic approach, which incorporated some of Orff, which with emphasis on movement and instruments. If we've had that class, you know he uses a lot of instruments that he developed, and they also use solfege in this, and they did limit, though, the folk songs in the repertoire. So these were the 4 different groups, and that was how they each lined up, being just a little bit different. What was the procedure? All the students at the beginning of the treatment were administered a pretest, the PMMA, the Primary Measures of Music Audiation by Gordon, and each student recorded their answers on an answer sheet. The test was scored for each student, and we do know that the PMMA has a high index reliability. After they were tested and they had a baseline of where the students were, then they began a treatment plan of either the solely Kodaly method, or the traditional method, or one of the 2 eclectic methods, which one of them incorporated a little bit of Kodaly, and one of them incorporated a little bit of Orff with some other methods intertwined there, some other things. The music classes met every other day, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday one week, and then the next week they would meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Each lesson was 20 minutes in length. At the end of the treatment plan, each individual student was tested with an IPT, an individual performance test, by the investigator and other assistants. And these other assistants, they said, were former music teachers, so they would have been qualified to administer that type of test. This IPS test was developed by the investigator. Each student was brought in and they played an audio recording of tonal and rhythmic patterns. The students were to echo the patterns back and that was done by recording each student. Either the teacher or the helpers, the assistants, would record each student. They were scored according to their accuracy. So like for the tonal, it was marked wrong if the student were sharp or flat, even a quarter tone. To analyze the procedure, a randomized analysis of covariance was used to analyze each of the 4 dependent variables, with the exception of the last one. For the last one, they didn't feel like that the analysis of covariance fit and worked well with that type of testing they were doing, and they used a t-test for that. What did they find when all this was done? I was certainly curious to find out which one was going to come out on top, if one of them were. So here were the conclusions by the researcher. There was a significant difference in teaching first grade students how to sing on pitch between the 4 methods. There was a significant difference in teaching first grade students how to echo rhythms between the 4 methods. There was a significant difference in teaching first grade students how to audiate rhythm patterns between the 4 methods. And the only one where the null hypothesis was retained was in the last one, that there will be no significant differences in teaching first grade students how to audiate tonal patterns, because the null hypothesis was retained. So the analyzed data, the students who only used the Kodaly method had a slightly higher score in the ability to echo rhythm patterns, with P being less than 0.01. Okay, so Kodaly came out on top of all of the methods. Secondly, the students who only used the Kodaly method had the ability to sing on pitch better, with P is less than 0.05. And the third area, the students who only used the Kodaly method had the ability to audiate rhythms better, with P less than 0.03. So we know by this analyzed data that this was good. It was a good test. There was no significant differences, though, in the very last one for the in between the methodologies that were used, and therefore the hypothesis was retained for that last one. So the researchers' conclusions: the approach that a teacher uses does make a difference in the abilities of students to echo rhythms, to match pitches, and to audiate rhythm patterns. However, the approach a teacher uses does not make a difference in a student's ability to audiate tonal patterns. For my conclusion and take on this, I believe there are many methods that have proven to be useful in helping young students to sing on pitch and echo rhythm patterns. I personally have been very impressed with the Kodaly method. I really had never been exposed to that before this master's at Bob Jones University, but I have been very impressed with it. Not only is it a successful method, but the resources are readily available on the internet, with a wealth of folk songs and lesson plans available. And not only is it a successful, resourceful method, but it also is economical, especially for teachers that have very small budgets. And that is the conclusion, except for my last page, which shows the reference, and that is the conclusion of this study.